Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staten and Robbie Williams here. We are going to be joined by Adam Nathan shortly, I believe, as well. So it is going to be a three-way tonight, Robbie, to celebrate a win for the Seahawks. And listen, I don't know what this team is, Robbie. I'm going to confess that now. I've no idea what they are. To play as badly as they did last week, and then this is a really tough game. You know, to go to Detroit, you could see how amped they were. The Lions didn't play that badly either. It's not as if, you know, they did, apart from the Goff interception, which obviously is a huge play, which we will come on to. It's obviously a huge play because it's the big defining moment in the game, I think, which is why Trey Brown's on the thumbnail, because nobody made a huge backbreaking mistake like a pick six in the game and giving the other team cheap points. So that was a huge moment. But apart from that, the Lions moved the ball very, very well. And the Seahawks also, Robbie, showed some of the same issues that we saw last week. Yet to find a way to win, you can't help but say it's credit to the team, credit for bouncing back. I will say it again, I don't really know what they are or how good or bad they are after these two games. I'm kind of sat here. I don't know what to write. That's why I've not written anything, because I don't know what to put in an instant reaction post. I thought I'm just going to come on the stream and admit I haven't got a clue. So, Robbie, maybe you've got a better idea than me. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, your confusion is I'm just as confused, to be honest. I mean, it's hard to figure out this team. Last week, I think, it being the first game, did I feel like after a few days of sitting on it, did I overreact? Yeah, maybe a little bit, but at the same time, like, that's a team that you've had months to prepare for, that you should have been like way more amped up first game at home, and it just felt like we came out flat. Today, they played a lot better. There were still a lot of plays that I was like, what are we doing? And then a lot of plays like, all right, there we go. That was great. And so it's like, I felt like there was part of me sometimes that I felt like Detroit was just letting us hold on, and then we ended up just pulling it away. I mean, there's so many things about this game. It went back and forth. My emotions were all over the board. My emotions are all over the board with this team. I don't know what they are. I can't tell if they're going to be a 6-win team, a 10-win team, somewhere in between. I'm not really sure, but you know what? I'm enjoying this victory today. I was really happy to see us win, and I was just excited that Lock won the coin toss, and something about it just, it's like I felt good about it. I felt good about it when we were coming out there to get the ball. It's like something just felt right. I liked the play calls towards the end, and this defense is suspect though. There are a lot of holes there.
Well, the one thing I do know is that Tyler Lockett is a fantastic football player. And I think he showed that again today. He's played, I'm trying to find the right words to put this, Robbie. I think he has played at a level of consistency that I'm not sure many other players in the NFL in his generation have played with. It's remarkable because clearly there are receivers who have been better than Tyler Lockett. That's not unfair to say that over the last 5, 6, 7 years. But nobody, I think, has been as consistently solid as he has. A lot of these receivers will be quite streaky, or they will have sort of personality characteristics which prevent them from maxing out their talent. Like Antonio Brown's a good example of that. He's in terms of talent, Antonio Brown was probably one of the greatest players to ever play receiver, but personality, character-wise, he was an idiot. So he has never really maxed out on that. And the one thing that Tyler Lockett has done is he has got every sinew out of his talent. And it's just, when you need a play, you turn to Tyler Lockett. It actually makes me think, Robbie, because it's easy to think this way. The Seahawks offense is structured so that it's never going to be a prolific sort of spread style, feed the receivers type. It does make you wonder what yardage you could have put up in one of those offenses if he'd have been there all this time instead of Seattle. But I don't think it really matters in the context of his career. He deserves every penny of every big contract that he's got. Every single time he's signed a new contract, people have gone, is it a bit too much? And it's always proved to be exceptional value for money. Look, the second touchdown it's not a spectacular play call or anything, Robert. It's a good play call. he executes the play call. He does what he's supposed to do in the play call. But even then, the fact that he can extend his arm out and touch the pylon, he's not dropped it into the end zone. We've seen plays like that already this week where it goes back for a touchback. He could have put a foot out of bounds and it would have been on the 1 yard line. No, he finishes the play and he gets the touchdown. And that first touchdown, Robbie, that is such a good play. He's well covered there. But it's a classic Lockett play. Just the ability to catch that ball and then somehow have his feet in the perfect place to get them down. Exceptional. He is a fantastic player. I said that he's an all-time underrated player on Twitter, and I was waiting. No one said it, but I was waiting for somebody to say, "What are you on about underrated?" Everybody loves him. But in terms of a national contest, no one ever talks about him as one of the very best receivers in the league. But I think he is, Robbie. He's different. He isn't a Julio or a Antonio Brown or a Justin Jefferson. He's what he is. He's a Tyler Lockett. And you know what? 15 years' time, someone will come along and they will get compared to Tyler Lockett. Because they are so consistent and they play a lot like him. And that's the biggest credit I think you can get to him, is that we will be having that kind of a conversation one day.
Yeah, and you just said it right there. The consistency is the big thing with Tyler Lockett. I mean, you've seen him make some ridiculous catches in the past, and he does it time and time again. And, and he just puts himself in a position to I like the little, I don't even know what you call it, like a little stutter step towards the back of the end zone, where he just slows down enough to kind of get the defender in close enough that they can't really turn around. But then he kind of does this last second thing. I just don't know, man. He puts himself in such good positioning. He has such good body awareness when it comes to catching the football that it throws the DBs off. And you're right. I think he's vastly underrated. But I mean, obviously I know people in Seattle love him. So it's a fantastic player to have on our team.
Exceptional player and brilliantly done. Somebody is quite rightly. I'm glad they put it in a super chat because it's really drawn my attention to it. How about Forsyth and Kerhan? Wow. WA Fish Quest, thank you for that super chat. Get your super chats in if you've got a question, a comment, a statement. If you want to say anything, super chatting is the way to get it on the screen, and we will address it as quickly as possible. I always say straight away, but then when we're ranting away, Robbie, sometimes we can.
Especially when we're all fired up, we'll get that's
right. But yes, I think that is a great point to make there in that super chat. Yeah. A lot of the talk in the week was the fact that Cross and Lucas are not going to play. That's going to be a major issue. And I have to say, Robbie, it was never an issue. There was at no point in that game was that an issue. I think the Lions were complaining at the end. Someone sent me a tweet about it. It's an old friend saying that it was a hold at the end, but I don't think it necessarily was. What you see from players all the time, if they don't think they're going to get to the quarterback, they do this. They do a very good. It's the same as Tyler Lockett will throw himself. He kind of flops. You call it a flop. We call it a dive in our sports. And Tyler Lockett's very good at the flop to draw a penalty. And pass rushers, the top pass rushers are very good at that as well. If they're not going to get there, just sort of act like you've been pulled back slightly. I thought that would have been to me. Look, if it was given, whatever. But I don't think it was so egregious that had to be given. So I think you have to. There was a couple of plays where I really zoned in on Stone Forsyth doing an excellent job at left tackle. And bravo to them, Robbie, because all right, the Lions were missing Josh Paschal. Aiden Hutchinson's a very good player. They're going to face bigger challenges if they have to play more games than this Lions pass rush. But they got the job done. And when you play backup tackles at the same time, I don't think you can ask for a better performance than that.
Yeah, I feel like they obviously they came out and performed. I feel like the tight ends deserve some credit as well. They came down and I watched it early. I kind of, what's great about it is I kind of forgot about it as the game progressed. But early on I was watching, both tackle positions, and I feel like they were being helped out a lot by the tight ends. But I mean, still, that's to be expected when you're going up against Aiden Hutchinson. So for me, I was really happy to see the way they played, and like you said, if they're going to need to continue to play, and they're going to have to go up against some better talent, challenging defensive ends and everything. But for today, they did what they needed to do and got the job done. So yeah, I mean, hats off to them. Seriously, they played well.
Do you make a good point on the tight ends? I suppose that's the natural place to go next, as we're talking about the game, is the way that perhaps the game plan and offense supported those two players to give them that bit of extra protection. And I'd have to go back and watch the whole game again focusing on how the tight ends did that, Robbie, but I noticed a few times that they were in support, and given that the quarterback was mostly extremely clean, apart from that ridiculous sack at the end, which was just, if they'd have lost, I think we might have, if they'd have got a touchdown at the end, that might have been the first place we'd have gone today, was that sack that Geno took.
That was pretty bad.
It's one of the worst sacks you'll ever see. But
yeah.
That wasn't on the tackles, that was on Geno Smith. And so I think you have to give them credit for that. I think the offensive game plan, Robbie, overall was very, very good. Look, it's easy to sort of say, well, they just scored in overtime and that's that. But it's not easy just to come back out and immediately march down the field and go and score a touchdown. And you've got to give them credit there. There was lots of what I would call, Robbie, easy, well-schemed passing concepts. Just little things like the tight ends settling into the right spot.
Yeah.
Giving Geno Smith a chance to get on the move and have an easy outlet. And when you see a game like that, Robbie, I kind of feel like, why can't they just do that most weeks? Because we sort of see these games where Geno plays like this and they get the tight ends involved and they get Geno on the move. And there's lots of, these kind of what I would call McVay style passing concepts from the McVay disciple that they've got as an offensive coordinator. And I just sometimes wonder why they can't do this more often. Why can't they find ways to take on opponents with the same level of consistency in this way that like McVay does and that Kyle Shanahan does? I glanced at the screen, Robbie, for a second. I can see it in the reflection of the window. Red zone's on. And I saw Brock Purdy throw in the same bloody slant that you see San Francisco throw every single game that seems to come off. And I think if they can do that every week, why can't the Seahawks play like that on offense in their passing game more weeks than not? They've got the McVay guy in there. McShay, there's a blast from the past. Shout out to Tom McShay, who's no longer ridiculously part of the ESPN broadcasts and draft coverage. McVay, they've got the McVay guy in there. Why can't they just do that more often? Because that was a really good game plan, and it won them the game.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the way they used the tight ends there too at the end. I mean, it just felt like they were, settling it. Like, I mean, the Noah Fant or the first play right out the gate, I thought for sure they were going to run the ball. I think they came out and surprised me, like right out the gate, and threw it right down the middle to Fant, which was a big gain. I thought it came out, set the tone right away in overtime that they were going to go win this game, not just try to get down there and like kick a field goal or something. So yeah, I think overall it was really good game plan. And even just that, just that overtime alone, I feel like the play calling was exceptional.
It almost felt inevitable at one point. I bet if you were a Lions fan watching it, you probably felt helpless. Like there's nothing. What can they do here? Yeah, in fact, as I'm talking away and I'm seeing the super chats come in, I have got a window open here, and there's a huge. Oh, it's got in. I'm going to go and get rid of this huge mosquito that's just come in, and I'm going to introduce Adam. Adam, while I'm doing that, go and give us your thoughts on the game.
I thought it was fantastic. It was one of those that would have been a real sickener to lose at the end, I think, because I don't know. Obviously, I've only heard the last couple of bits that you just said there, Robbie, but to my mind, like the Seahawks in a lot of facets played about as well as we could ever have wished for them to play. And I extend that to Shane Waldron, who I don't think he's probably called a better game than that in his Seahawk career, especially given the tackle situation. And I thought that brought the best out of Geno. I thought all the receivers gave everything to the quarterback and to the coordinator that they could possibly have wished for. And to lose that, having played so well in so many parts, would have been a real gut punch, I think. So to come away with a win, and don't need to tell you that sort of the fine line of sport really does rest on something like that, because we'd be devastated, and God knows what this stream would be like had we even lost a coin toss and they march down and score a touchdown. It's such fine lines that it's all built on. But I think you'd be hard pushed to find a Seahawk or Lion fan that didn't think that was a fair result overall, because I don't think the Lions played anything like their best, and I thought the Seahawks in a lot of ways really did. So just fantastic to come away with a win that you don't salvage the season in week 2, But going 0-2, having had two performances like that of such different ends of the spectrum, maybe people are thinking, well, what is this team? So to come away with it like that, just fantastic.
Just give you an update. There is now Coke Zero everywhere in my room. Do not try and kill a mosquito, which it's done. The deed has been done, but there's now Coke everywhere. Don't ever try and use a Coke bottle to whack, because what happens is it just fizzes up and it explodes. So there's Coke everywhere, all over the floor. My wife is, if she sees this, is going to be non-pleased. The super chat's coming in. Kyle says, thanks for the content as always, Rob. This offense seems to run well when they don't abandon the run and they involve the tight ends with play action. Kyle, thank you for that. We were just talking about that, Adam. I'm sorry, I was killing a mosquito while you were speaking, so I've not heard a lot of what you said. But they did involve the tight ends a lot. We have sort of seen these in at times with Seattle where they do really involve the tight ends, but then often that is followed by a game where they struggle or they don't involve the tight ends. It'd be nice to see sort of a consistent approach to the passing game, wouldn't it?
It's funny because passes like that could be seen, and when you've got three tight ends on the field, it could be seen as quite a conservative or negative approach. But I saw a tweet from someone coming up to halftime that said, man, I wish the Seahawks were as creative as the Lions were in some of their plays. And I'm not sure it's creativity. I think it's license. Now, look, it's let the Lions down this evening in a way. There's 2 4th downs that have been, that they failed on. But I've seen some of their comments, about big bodies. So I presume you've been speaking about that in some capacity. But, 4th and short, obviously they're going to look to punt where possible. But the number of big guys they've got there and the rollouts and using the tight ends, it can sort of be pick your poison. And I love to see, especially the throwing downs out of 3 tight end sets. I thought it causes such confusion in the opposition. You've got Parkinson wide open. Fant makes 2 big catches in overtime. Disley, chipped in with sort of a Disley-ish performance, for want of a better term. So I'd love to see that. And for me, it's not about creativity. I thought Shane Waldron drew up an amazing game, but it's given the license to do it. That punt towards the end of the first half when we were in positive territory, I would go for that. You've got the bodies, you've got the plays, you've got the dimensions to do it. Have the belief to do it, because they are good enough, and they're much better at that than they are going the other way. That's for sure.
Got some more super chats coming in. This question's kind of just popped into my head before, so I get to them. There's a super chat directed at you, Robbie, which I'm going to bring up in a second. But what I wanted to ask you about, Robbie, is if I was a Lions fan tonight, one of the things I would be saying is there's a lot of positivity around the Lions, and Jared Goff has not played terribly today, but ultimately hasn't the pick 6 decided the game? And isn't this the sort of the thing when you are, and I'm sure we will have this with Geno Smith. I think we talked about it a little bit last week, and I think we may well find this in the future. When you haven't got the guy, it'd be very easy for the Lions tonight to sit there and go, the difference in that game ultimately was that pick 6, because that's prevented the Lions from having a chance to win it in regulation. They've had to come from behind. They've just about pulled it off, but then the Seahawks get the ball back, and that's the end of the game. They never see it again. And that's the thing, isn't it? That. And with Jared Goff, he is always going to have the potential to be Jared Goof again. And that's what he was today. But that was a terrible interception, pick 6, a gift for the Seahawks. Kudos to Trey Brown, who had a good spell in that series, didn't he? But that has been extremely costly. And this is the world you live in when you can have, look, Jared Goff has played well for the Lions. Geno Smith has played well for the Seahawks. But until you have an undisputed guy, of which there are only a handful of those in the NFL, you are always going to have that conversation, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't know. I in a way, I feel like, they'll probably circle back to that. But there were so many times during the game, like I said early on, I felt like the Lions were just letting us stay in it. And there were times where I felt like that, a couple penalties here, a couple things there, they just let us get away with it and kept us driving, especially on offense. So for me, I could look at that and be like, well, we let them get it in the game, but you can circle back and obviously come to that interception being one of the not rare, but one of the key moments to give the Seahawks the win. But that being said, I mean, he bounced right back down. I mean, Trey Brown had a sack and the pick six, but then he gave up the touchdown right after that to Jared Goff to, was it Josh Reynolds or whoever. So I mean, it's one of those things where like you can look at that and say that, but he came right back down to score and put him back in another position to, we went to overtime. So
yeah, that's a fair point. He did bounce straight back, didn't he? And Geno Smith did after that honking sack. Now, Lynn Nash says, Robbie, where did you get that hoodie? Lynn, thank you for the super chat. Robbie, show us the hoodie.
Yeah, great question. So this is my old roommate back in college. He was an artist, and so he during I don't remember sure when he made it, but he made it I think fairly after. It was either year we won the Super Bowl or the year before. He was making these hoodies, and he made a couple other things. And then NFL actually came after him and said, you stop producing things that have like the Seahawks eyes and stuff, and like it's got like the actual Seahawk on it. And like he made a Michael Bennett riding around on a bicycle shirt, and that he made like $30,000 off that, just one shirt. And and the NFL ended up kind of cease and desist on the old marketing his own stuff. So that's where I got
a question. If you put a pair of shades on that Seahawk, then would he be able to sell those or not?
I think so.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's the eyes they've done.
It was part of it, yeah.
So I'm afraid, Lynn, it's a collector's item. There will not be any chance of getting another one. Jeremy says, am I crazy for being upset about some of Geno's decisions today? He'll never really get DK involved with contested catches. He only seems to throw to wide open receivers. Throw guys open. Adam, I started the stream by saying I didn't really know what the Seahawks were after this, because we've had 2 games and it still feels there's some clear issues with this team. There are some very clear issues that we will get onto. But today we saw a very good offensive performance, exceptional offensive performance. But then that's sort of offset with the fact that they had 3 meaningful yards in the game in the second half last week. So working out what they are is difficult. Geno Smith had some. He did what he needed to do, I'd say, for 90% of this game. But I don't think Jeremy's completely out of order for saying that there is probably 10% that was quite frustrating. But the 90% has helped you win the game without sort of Geno Smith managing the offense, having that drive at the end, getting the ball out when he was about to get hit a couple of times very, very well, sort of understanding what he needed to do to deliver the pass. The Seahawks don't win this game. But there was almost a pick six, which could easily have been, there was almost an interception that could easily have been a pick six. And there were a couple of other sort of frustrating moments. So how do you sum up what was a very good day for Geno Smith, but are people, within their rights to still maybe have a couple of question marks?
I heard a stat that I thought was really interesting on Friday, that passes released under 2 seconds, Geno Smith was 26th in the league last year. And then passes over 2 seconds, between 2.5 and then above 2.5 seconds, he was second and then first in the league for, I think it would have been sort of passer rating on passes like that, or perhaps it was completion percentage. But either way, I wonder if, throwing guys open is the kind of pass that happens sort of hitch, drop back, bang, and you sort of do it waiting for the route to develop. And I thought what Waldron did so well today was that he was able to mitigate the fact that we didn't have our 2 tackles and sort of create a quick game for the team with play action worked in, sort of with handoffs and, draws and whatever worked into, so that it gave Geno Smith time whilst making it a sort of quick passing game, if that makes sense. So it managed to get the ball out in pretty risk-free situations, which the line deserve a lot of credit for at least holding up for enough time for guys to get open. And then there were guys schemed open all over the place. Like you think of some of those tight end routes. I think 9 receivers they had that caught balls at some point, which is pretty amazing, really. So I think it was Jeremy that made the super chat. I think there are times where that is certainly true. I'm not sure today is one of those days where I would necessarily subscribe to that.
Got another super chat from Jason. Thank you, Jason, for Mosquito Gate 2023. There is, the floor is soaked. Like it's actually uncomfortable to sit here in a puddle of Coke because of that bloody mosquito. I could see it kind of just bounce. It was trying to get in, and then I was going to be able to close the window in time, and then it sneaked in, and then Coke everywhere. So thank you, Jason, for that. There's another one here from Max. Absolutely buzzing, lads. Just what the doctor ordered. What a way to get the fans to buy in. Love it, says Max with a love heart there. Thank you, Max. Really appreciate the super chat. Keep those coming in. So, yes. When I'm sort of looking through the stats here, obviously we've talked about Geno Smith. We have talked about Tyler Lockett to start the stream. Let's have a bit on the defense then. So they had 2 sacks today, which is 2 more than they had in the first, I think, 7 quarters of the season. Draymond Jones got a bit of a cleanup sack. Trey Brown got a sack on a blitz where Cam Young was also involved as well. They had 6 TFLs. I think really it's, when you look across the other side, for the Lions to only have 1 sack and 1 TFL, both from Alex Anzalone. So none of their defensive linemen impacted the game with a sack or a tackle for a loss. That really speaks volumes. But there's all sorts of places you could go with the defense. Devon Witherspoon's a good example of that. Devon Witherspoon had a key breakup on a 4th down for a turnover on downs. He also got beat on plays. It was a bit of a roller coaster journey for him in his debut. And it feels a little bit, Robbie, like that is the story of the day, that there was a lot of up and down stuff on defense.
Yeah, and I think smart for the Lions kind of almost try to attack Devon Witherspoon a couple of times. I mean, he didn't get a lot of, preseason stuff or anything like that, or even practice much. So for him to come in and play, he had a couple bright moments and a couple boneheaded moments. But I think overall, I was just excited to see him out on the field and actually making plays. So gives me some hope there that maybe we do have something in him, and that he'll take his licks. He's a rookie, but I think he'll come back and do some things. I tell you what, it was actually, I don't want to be like super negative, but like Julian Love is actually worrying me. I felt like he was absolute garbage today. I felt like he was getting burned all over the place. And I think this is the 2nd week in a row that I've been super unimpressed with him. So I don't know. Maybe you guys saw something different, but for me, I thought Julian Love was pretty piss poor. I actually think both safety positions are contradicts as well. I just feel like it's a hazard at this point,
It's not a bone, it's not plus, is it? And
No.
When you look at other teams seem to have issues at safety as well. But the difference between maybe those other teams and the Seahawks is they aren't paying $58 million at the position. That's the difference. So if you're going to live in this world where your safeties are a bit hit and miss, why not just have 2 cheap safeties back there? That's what I think every team should be thinking that way. And if you could transport $50 million from your safety position to your defensive line, I suspect that this defense would look an awful lot different right now. That's part of the problem for it. And I completely agree with you. And I saw Adam nodding along there that Julian Love has not been very good. And I don't think Quandre Diggs has been very good either in these first 2 games. And I have to say, Adam, look, this is not going to be a big thing. I'm not going to go on about it loads today. But I do not watch Bobby Wagner and think, fantastic. Like when I'm watching the Seahawks defense play these first 2 games, Bobby Wagner will get stiff-armed by Sam Laporta, and Sam Laporta gets hailed for the play. But if Bobby Wagner makes a routine stop for 1-yard gain in a running play, the commentators act, we have to go through the routine of, and there he is, Bobby Wagner, what a play. Do you know what? He did a speech this week and got the team riled up, and what a class. Oh, it's so good to see him back in Seattle. In these first 2 games, have thought that he has looked hesitant and not at all like he looked for the Rams in the 3 or 4 games that I saw him last year. I thought he was hesitant in Seattle in 2021 and was kind of like skirting around the issues when really you want to see your linebackers putting their heads down and going full throttle. And I think he played pissed off last year because he got cut. And I think he's come back to Seattle and has reverted back to what he was a couple of seasons ago. And if the benefit is there for the leadership and sort of the organization, then that's fine. But I felt like watching that today, there was a lot of underneath stuff again that was being given up. A lot of the same issues that we saw last year. I just don't really see the benefit right now, Adam, of his performance on the field, even if everybody's right that he is such an amazing presence off the field. And maybe that speech was the difference today that got everybody going again.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe that is enough, for want of a better phrase, versus what the alternative is in that position. I mean, watching Wagner play now reminds me a little bit, Rob, and this will probably resonate more with you than Robbie, but when you play five-a-side and there's the old bloke that sort of sits himself just in front of the penalty area and he takes every free kick and he wants to touch the ball 100 times a game, he just passes it side to side to side. Doesn't actually do much with it, but in his mind is keeping the ball ticking over and is therefore like a crucial component. But then all of a sudden, like a young kid will just skin him and smash one in. It's like, oh, right, I see there's a bit of an issue there. That's what Wagner slightly reminds me of at the minute, sort of that the old guy playing five-a-side that thinks he's holding the team together. And look, maybe he is, and maybe the difference he's offering mentally is so great that it's worth sort of 3-4 points a game. And it's not for us to say that that isn't happening because we're not in the locker room. But yeah, it does seem like a strange thing to do, to bring back someone that you basically fired 18 months ago because they weren't good enough or quick enough then, and to give him such an important role. I actually thought the Lions sort of didn't use weaknesses of speed in those areas enough. I mean, if you look at the difference it makes with players like Trey Brown and even Witherspoon, who wasn't perfect, but that speed he had, it's striking against some of the older guys, and Wosu, it's striking how much quicker and how much more just sort of buzz they've got when they're flying around the ball. And that's what Wagner used to have. And it's not, don't blame him because he's an old man in relative terms for the sport now, but he doesn't have that. So I don't know. He's obviously offering some hell of a mental boost to those guys, or if not, maybe he's not going to be the guy that sees out the season in that position.
I'll say this, for me, Wagner, I've seen multiple times, and maybe it's hard because, he was such a dominant player for so long that it's easy to look at him now and be like, he's not the same guy. And he's not. I mean, that's clearly the thing, but I think we forget, fellas, Cody Barton was our linebacker last year. So this year, though our linebackers may not be as good, they are better than they were last year, because last year
somebody said that. Garbage. Somebody said that in the comments there, but I don't think that's really the point to make. Is that he's not as bad as Cody Barton. I mean, that's really dabbing with faint praise, that isn't it? It's not really that should not be the bar from which we set gauging performance. I'm not suggesting this isn't to sort of pile on, and I don't want to linger on it too much. I do not think he looks that great out there, and he looks a lot like he was when he was in Seattle last time. And I had major reservations about bringing him back for this reason. And the Seahawks have won today, and that's great. But I just wonder if down the line, he is not going to be the kind of positive that I think a lot of people were hoping. And he may actually be a liability at times, because I think the other teams will do what Adams suggested there and take more advantage of that lack of movement, mobility across the middle. Because it seemed like for a large part of this game, they could do whatever they wanted across the middle. And the Rams do that last week. And I don't really know why the Lions didn't capitalize as much on it at times. It felt a lot like they were running the ball for the sake of it sometimes, the Lions. And maybe they could have just stuck to the other stuff. Anyway, David says, and a super chat, what do you think of the Witherspoon debut? Was it enough, he says. Thank you, David, for the super chat. And I thought he was fine. I thought it was what I kind of expected. Guys, I thought he would be physical, and he was. He made a really nice play against the run early on. He had the fourth down pass breakup for a turnover, turnover on downs. He did get beat on the flea flicker, but it's a flea flicker. Can be forgiven. It's not a traditional 1v1 on the outside. He bit on a flea flicker, and there was a couple of other passes. But I think this is what you are going to get. I think anybody expecting Devon Witherspoon to be Patrick Peterson is going to be really disappointed, or Jalen Ramsey. That's not. We may have taken him in the same kind of range, but he's not going to be that kind of player. They have drafted him because he is going to be scrappy, physical, hit. He may be better off playing up at the line than in coverage. I think he is going to give up some plays in the passing game, but I think he will also be very competitive and help you fight and scrap on the outside. So I thought it was a fine debut, but I'm also perhaps realistic about what he's going to be, and other people I don't know, maybe it's with something you two want to decide, is the player that I've just summarized worth a top 5 pick? That's going to be a conversation that I think a lot of people have. If he does not become Jalen Ramsey and Patrick Peterson, people will make that point, won't they? And are already making that point on Twitter or X, whatever it's called. What do you reckon, Adam?
It's going to be really hard given the narrative that went through the whole of last season, whereby it was just assumed we get a quarterback. Then it was just assumed we get a defensive lineman. And, with Jalen Carter playing as he is now, I didn't want Jalen Carter. There's not a lot that I could see in Jalen Carter that would have made me want him in this particular team. Maybe a good fit for the Eagles, not for Seattle. But the narrative is going to be, here's what you could have won over in Philadelphia. And I think that's going to make it harder for Witherspoon to sort of get a fair crack at the whip. But, if he can, be tough in the run game like he was, if he can get those couple of stops that he did, there was the one where it looked like it may have been a trip, but, it was probably pretty good coverage. And he made 2 really important stops, which in the guy's first game, what more can you ask for him really than that? There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be little things that he can hopefully clean up on, but it's going to be really hard anyway for him to make it feel like he's a fifth overall pick, because he's not going to touch the ball or be at the line of scrimmage enough to really involve himself on a regular basis. But if he can make 3 or 4 plays that tilt the field every game, then I'm not going to argue with that in the slightest.
Robbie? Oh, you're on mute, Robbie. You are on mute. Robbie has forgotten how to press there. Oh, no, Adam's on mute.
This is going to be such a good point from Robbie. He is building up. It's going to be like a volcanic eruption of take.
I mean, I'd hate to be Robbie. I'd hate to be Robbie right now because there's a lot of pressure on what he's going to say when he finally
He's scrambling. Crazy. Look at the eyes. The eyes have gone.
There's a button, Robbie, that says mute on it. You have to click that. Oh, he's gone. Okay.
You've offended him, Rob. You've insulted his intelligence. Is that maybe an anti-American thing that you said? Would you say the same thing to me? Click on the button that says mute. I'm not sure.
Are you calling me a racist? Is that what you're saying?
That's not for me to say. That's not for me to say, Rob. There's hundreds of people in the comments. They can answer that question. It's not for me to say. What did you think of Witherspoon?
Okay, well, I thought Robbie is back, so
there we go.
I'll tell you what, go ahead, Robbie.
Listen, I was hitting that damn mute button 1,000 times. It wouldn't come off mute. I don't know what was going on. So, my apologies. Now I forgot the question. What was the question? Witherspoon?
I love that. He forgot. Yes. What did you think of Devon Witherspoon?
Yeah, again, I mean, I think I kind of touched on it earlier just a little bit. Like I thought, to be expected. I thought he made some good plays, and there was a couple boneheaded plays, and I think it's just like he's going to take some licks this season. But overall, I mean, if he can continue to develop, I'm going to be excited about him. And I'm just happy he was out there. I was, the fact that he hadn't gotten to play much, was really concerning that he wasn't able to make it back and play. So for me to just even get him out there and see that, I'm really was pretty excited. Hey, listen, Rough Spoon, I knew how to press the damn mute button. It just wouldn't work. It was not working. All right.
I love the comment. It is just stating what happened. Yeah. Robbie doesn't know how to press mute.
The people have spoken.
The people have spoken. He's not taking the piss. He's just stating it. You don't know how to press the unmute. I love that he's typed that as a comment. That's made the stream for me. That's quite funny. But what I was going to say, guys, is I wonder a little bit whether there's a problem in college football. When you actually look at the draft for next year, I'm finding it really hard to find top 10 picks, players that you can say they look destined to go in the top 10. And it was exactly the same a year ago. There was a distinct lack of these are top players. They're going to go in the top 10. Now, I'm not saying that there's none. Like, you will always get a quarterback or a defensive lineman or an offensive or whatever. And we've seen that, we saw that this year, that will go very, very early. That's fine. I'm not saying there's no players at all, but that those drafts where you have a really thick top of the first round, we've not had it. We've not really had that for a while. And I'm wondering if it's something to do with the way that college football is, with the way that college football is being developed now. I don't know what the answer to what exactly is the problem with college football. Is it a schematic thing? Is it the way teams are being put together and developed? I don't know. But there is a real, is the money thing going to play into that? You know, a player's earning too much? Is it maybe taking a bit of that fire out of the belly when they get to college to prove a point? I don't know what it is, but I think there's a bit of an issue there. And what it ends up meaning is that if you are 5th overall, for like the Seahawks were this year because of Denver, you could easily be there with a pick that you hope's going to be a generational, fantastic, franchise-changing pick. But you may end up just having to take the player that you feel most positive about, have got the most conviction about. And I think that's what the Seahawks just did with Devon Witherspoon, that they felt he was their most Seahawky player in that draft, available to them at number 5. And that's what they went with. And I can imagine that being the case again next year, that somebody else will pick 5th overall and will end up in that exact same position. Because after Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr., there is not a great deal to get excited about at the top of round 1. So I wonder if that's, you know, I think that is a context, and people are going to talk about Jalen Carter forever. I would just implore all Seahawks fans who are listening to this stream to just not go down that rabbit hole. You know, the stuff about Jalen Carter, it's easy to forget now, but at the time, as a person who has to make a decision on whether you are going to bring this player into your locker room and pay him millions and millions of dollars, teams were completely in the right frame of mind to decide that's not for us. We're going to let somebody else go there. And it wasn't just the Seahawks, it was other teams as well. And an article came out a couple of weeks ago saying the Eagles only decided to take him on the day of the draft. So even they were having the doubts. They had to have a meeting about it, about are we comfortable with this? And they decided at the last minute that they were. So that says it all. Yes, the Seahawks need that type of player, but don't relive this draft forever with revisionist history about Jalen Carter, because his character flags were as strong as certainly any player that I can remember. Blitzy the Clown says, Brooks looks as fast as pre-injury. If only he could wrap up tackles, he'd be okay. And he's not. Nice outing for Charbonnet today, making some nice plays, grateful for the win. Yeah, I think Jordan Brooks has come in and done pretty well. First, given he's coming off an ACL. Blitzy, great support for the channel. Really appreciate that super chat as well. Adam, what did you make of Zach Charbonnet? It was a bit of a cameo role for him. And they, so far, have not found the right kind of connection to get both running backs really sort of pushing productive two-headed monster. At the moment, it kind of looks like Ken Walker's going to get a lot of the work and Charbonnet is just a relief runner. They could probably do with working that one out, I would suggest. And maybe next week against the Panthers would be an ideal time to do that.
I think you could say that about quite a few positions. And something that I've been thinking about a lot in the last week is, you know, if you think about the great, I know we always hark back to the great Seahawks teams of 10 years or so ago, but you pretty much knew 1 to 22 who the 11 on each side starters were going to be. And a slight worry I've got about this year is that they don't appear to know what their sort of best team is on the field at this stage and who they want to feature and who they want to play where and who's going to be this cornerback, who's going to be at linebacker, you know, who's going to be outside linebacker. And I think running back is another position that, you know, they drafted Charbonnet in the second round and they want to showcase him. But, you know, Kenny Walker had an amazing first drive and then Charbonnet had one decent play and they sort of stuck with him for that drive. And I don't think that particularly suits Walker. I think he's the kind of guy that wants to feel like he's getting his way into the game. And so I thought Charbonnet did fine today, but I'd implore Seattle to, you know, pick one and go with them. And then if you need to change it out at some point, change it. But I'm slightly concerned that in a few positions, they're going to start chopping and changing for the sake of it. I think they did it a lot last week, especially in the secondary, sort of mixing players in and just chopping and changing. I'm not really sure that's how you build continuity or sort of your best team. And I hope they sort of go away from what they did today with that. Because I didn't love the policy. I want them to find their best players and stick with them and get them out there wherever possible.
Just before we bring Robbie in, Mutegate 2020. We've had Mosquito Gate, now we've got Mutegate. Robbie, let's see if... Let's have a drum roll. It worked! He's done it! Way! Robbie,
There's
thoughts on Charbonnet and what Adam was talking about there?
Yeah, I would like to see Charbonnet get a couple more touches, to be honest. I thought he ran when he had the ball. It looked like he was running pretty good. There's a couple times where I think Ken Walker Jr. just he dances a little too much in the background instead of hitting the hole. I really like Walker though, so for me it's hard to get mad because he does some incredible things. But there's a couple times where I just want him just to hit the damn hole and get through it, and I think Charbonnet does that really well. So maybe mix up the carries a little bit more and give Charbonnet a chance. And I'm not really sure what their game plan was, but trying to get him going. But I'd like to, even if it's to get him some touches through the air, screen passes or something. I'm not really sure, but I'd like to see Charbonnet get some more touches.
Super chat from Chad. Look, I love wins. I'm happy. However, it sure does feel like we are winning in spite of the coaching staff and not because of them, says Chad. Okay, that's an interesting topic. Adam, what do you make of that? Are the Seahawks winning? Well, have they won today in spite of the staff or not? And I think in fairness, Shane Waldron had a very good game as a play caller today. I suspect that Chad's opinion there is more aimed at the head coach and the defensive coordinator, who the jury is still very much out on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an enormous fan of either of those two guys. I think I've said it enough times that I don't need to repeat myself. Look, Pete obviously has this mystique over the players whereby they hugely buy into what he wants to do. I would love to see him release the shackles a little bit more, not on Waldron, I want to say, or give him license to do whatever he wants, because within Pete's construct, he called an amazing game today. But today's probably not the day that you can turn around and say they're winning in spite of the coaches. They scored 38 points. I think we probably know they're talent deficient in certain areas on defense, and that was probably showing up a little bit. I don't know enough about defensive scheme to go in here and say, Clint Hurt was the reason they gave up 31 points or the scheme. It would be disingenuous of me to even pretend that I knew enough about that. So I'm not going to do that. I think that the season may end because of Pete Carroll earlier than we would like it to, as I think it has done in the last 4 or 5 years. And that goes from drafting to in-game performance, to all of that recruitment stuff. But today is not the day where I'm going to sort of start hooting and hollering about that.
Robbie, so they gave 30 points away against the Rams, 31 against the Lions. Against the Lions today, 418 yards overall for the Lions, and last week for the Rams, 426. My biggest problem is, as we talked about last week, was these are just the same issues reoccurring, Robbie. How many years are we going to see the defense giving up yards galore before we say enough's enough? Is there not a better way of doing it than this? Is there a better way is there a way essentially to get the offense performing like it did today more often than not, with perhaps a younger offensive-minded head coach? And is there a way to get the defense playing a lot better with an expert, proven defensive coordinator, or even a young defensive coordinator who can come in and just run things his way? That's sort of the question that I think is a very valid question. It's the one that I keep coming back to as a Seahawks fan, which I think right now is the pathway to glory. And I agree with Adam. I think this season is going to be I think what we've seen these first 2 weeks is going to end up being what this season is. I think we're going to have some wins where we come on tonight and in other nights and go, wow, that was great. And didn't necessarily see that win coming, and wow, they've pulled it off. And it equally wouldn't surprise me if they go and lay an egg against the Carolina Panthers next week, who we're all going to expect them to go and beat. And it will level out. They will probably be a playoff team because the top 7 will get there in the NFC. But I don't think they'll be close to the Niners in terms of who's going to win this division. Maybe not, because the Rams are playing the Niners close. Maybe they're better than we all thought. Maybe they're going to be there as well. Maybe 3 teams make it into the playoffs this year. And I agree with Adam that ultimately what might lose Seattle a game is their inability in a third, fourth quarter to have the defensive capability to slow down, to make big plays, to restrict a top team. Now, that said, a lot of people thought Detroit were a top team last week after they beat the Chiefs, and the Seahawks have beaten them. So if they can go to Detroit and win, then people will say they can go to many other places and win. And that is a fair point as well, isn't it, I suppose? Robbie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic because on one hand, last week I would have easily said, yeah, the coordinators were the problem, and that, the defense and offensive coordinators just look like garbage with play calling. I'm still not sure what to make up with this defense. I don't know if it's talent. I don't know if it's the scheme. I'm not really sure what it is there, but there's definitely something off with this defense, and I think it ultimately is going to cost us games, and it's going to end up probably costing us the season. I think that if we end up making the playoffs, it's going to be what's going to hold us back. And I would be really interested to see what it's like to have. I think we kind of talked about it last week. A different head coach who wants to come in and just does things a little bit differently. Maybe I don't know if I know players love Pete and everything, but I just don't know. I don't know if it's just outdated. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what exactly is holding it back, but there's something there that's holding this team back.
We've got another super chat here. This one from Kyle. Peter's the new Jeff Fisher. Get ready for hovering around 500 every year, says Kyle. Thank you for that super chat. If you've got a super chat, send them in. I've noticed somebody mentioned in the comments, and it's on Red Zone right now, that the Giants are 17-0 down against the Cardinals, which means that in a game and a half, not even a half, a game and a quarter and a bit, the Giants are 57 points to 0. They lost their first game 40-0, and they're 17-0 now. That is, maybe this is just going to be a really effed up season. I just don't know, because you would have never, I'm not saying that anyone thought the Giants were going to be amazing this year, but did you see the Giants being this bad? And Brian Daboll, didn't he win Coach of the Year last year? And he is a good coach. No one can say he's a bad coach. But to be 57-0, and all right, the Cowboys at home is one thing, but the Cardinals, and in fair play to the Cardinals, everybody wrote them off as tanking for Caleb Williams. And they brought in a quarterback like a week before the season began in Josh Dobbs, and they nearly beat the Commanders last week, and they look like they're going to beat the Giants this week. So fair play to them. Maybe Jonathan Gannon's maybe he's the new Nick Sirianni, because Nick Sirianni had that terrible press conference and everybody had a good laugh at him, and then he was in the Super Bowl 2 years later. Jonathan Gannon had that horrendous speech that was all over Twitter, like before the season began, and everyone was laughing at him. And maybe the guy can coach. Who knows? Seems to be doing okay so far. Maybe that backs to the wall things work for him. A lot of people are asking about Jason. Have you got something you want to say there, Adam?
I did actually, because obviously the game, turns on potentially, the toss of a coin, and I wonder what chat you think we'd be having right now if we lost the coin toss and the Lions scored a touchdown. Like, I'm not even trying to be like negative. Like, I'm just interested, because the narrative of wins and losses can change so quickly. I wonder what you think your main takeaway had been. Let's say 2 good runs from Gibbs, Laporta catches another catch, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, just works Trey Brown because he's a world-class wide receiver and scores a touchdown. What do you think your reaction to the game would have been had that happened?
That is a fantastic question. My reaction after the game would have been to focus on the Seahawks blowing a 10-point lead late in the game. There was about 4 or 5 minutes when they were sort of driving to get back into it, and for them to score twice in that moment. If the Seahawks had given up a 10-point lead in 5 minutes and then lost in overtime because they couldn't stop the Lions, we would have been on here hammering the defense, would have been hammering Pete Carroll. We would have really criticized them for blowing that lead, and we would have been panicking about being 0-2. I think it would have been a very, very, very different, much more negative stream than we've been talking about. But that didn't happen. And I think the fact that having blown that 10-point lead, the fact that they came out and it wasn't like both teams had a possession and then the Seahawks won it. We've got the coin toss. We've come out. We've marched down the field emphatically and scored. Kind of washed all of that concern about giving the 10-point lead away because it was such a masterful overtime drive. It's what I would say. Robbie, your thoughts?
I'm trying to think. I think I'd be probably pretty pissed that we threw the ball so many times at that last under getting close to the 2 minutes and we didn't run the football and try to burn a little more time maybe. But yeah, blowing the 10-point lead would probably be where I've been pretty upset about.
By the way, I was just going to say that Russell Wilson seems to be playing quite well today, but then I just turned around and he was calling an unnecessary timeout, and it brought real flashbacks. So people have been asking about Jason Myers. How concerned are you? Because this is 3 missed kicks in 2 games. He missed 3 kicks all year last season, and I think I'm right in saying that there's a bit of a curse, isn't there, with Myers? Like if it's an odd number year, he has a terrible year. If it's an even number year, he has a very good season. So we're in an odd number. It's 2023. He's missed 3 kicks, hasn't he, so far this year? 3 field goals. So how concerned are you, Adam, with that?
I generally am of the view that kicker reliability can be so random, and it's one of those positions that you miss one and that sort of the arse can fall out of it entirely. So I struggle really analyzing kickers at all because it just seems so bizarre. Like, why would you ever miss? Like, I know that's hugely reductive, but why would you ever miss the one thing that you have to do in a dome, as someone said, that's not particularly, the distances weren't even that bad. So even the second one for, NFL kicker, the range at which they're knocking these over now. So I find, am I concerned? I'm not sure, because I'm only concerned if this is going to become a mental issue for him going forward. Assuming it's not, I mean, he's been made captain of the team for the first time ever, I think. I don't think he's ever been special teams captain along with Nick Ballore this year. So I'm not really worried, but equally it could be worrying. But I just sort of take each game as it comes with these kickers, because I just find the whole thing so bizarre that they just have one job to do and they either do or don't do it. I find it mystifying.
Bobby?
I'm not worried too bad yet. I think the first kick I was shaking my head like, what the hell? The second one was a pretty deep kick. I wasn't too worried about it. I mean, like, you would have made that would have been pretty cool, but man, we've seen him make them before. But at the same time, like, I'm not too worried about it yet. I think I could, if it happens again next week, ask me again, because I'm gonna start to get real concerned. But right now, I'm not worried about it.
Have you seen Jerick Reed and his social media post tonight? Neither of you.
Is he the one? Is he running around with the ski mask on?
Yes, so this is sort of doing the rounds. He has got a blue ski. Obviously, the blue ski mask thing was the Detroit were encouraging all the fans to wear these blue ski masks, and they the players were wearing them anyway. Jerick Reed got one on. It is quite funny, in fairness. They are, insult to injury stuff, and I love a bit of banter like this. I love, this is the kind of thing that I think we miss over in this country. It's you're constantly locked out of locker rooms and stuff. There's no footage ever leaks, and it's a bit of fun, and I like it. I like all of that. I like the fact there was drama all last week about Colorado State. It provided the only interesting college football game, I think, all weekend as a consequence. And I'm enjoying the Jerick Reed social media post. So if you haven't seen that, everyone, I would go and check that out. Has anybody seen any news on Tariq Woolen? By the way, I refuse to call him Reek Woolen. I'm sorry. I know it's his choice, but I think it's a ridiculous option to turn Tariq, which seems like a good name, into Reek, because Reek's not the kind of name that I'd want to have personally. It suggests that you're a bit smelly. So has anybody got any news there? Do we know if he's seriously injured, or he had a chest injury? Yes, Jason's right on the chat. I mean, it
was never even ruled out of the game, was he? It seemed like it was questionable the whole way, and I don't ever think I heard Aaron Andrews say he was out.
I mean, the fact that it was just a It was a chest. Oh, sorry. Carol said Reap Woolen hurt his shoulder a bit. He'll be okay. We'll figure it out. So apparently it was a shoulder. Even though it was named questionable as a chest. Maybe Carol's just got that wrong and it is a chest. Okay. Russell Wilson has got a touchdown and he has... Yeah, he's having a good day. I can't. I know there's going to be a lot of people who hate Russell Wilson now, and I share Adam's enthusiasm for some of the cordiness being exploited. But I don't know. Part of me thinks now that we haven't got to root against the Denver Broncos, I'm not as bothered, and it's quite interesting sort of watching how he gets on. So they're doing okay. The Niners and the Rams is 10-all, and the Rams have got the ball. I can't lose this game, fellas, because if the Niners win, I win a nice lump sum on a fantastic accumulator. I don't know what you call those over in America. Is it like a parlay or something?
Yeah, parlay. Well, yeah, parlay, sure.
Over here, it's an accumulator or an ACCA, and I'm relying on the Niners finishing mine off. And if they lose, the Niners lose, and it will be very much an enjoyable evening for that reason as well. Quick final thought. Just on the draft, I tried to. I went out with my wife for anniversary dinner yesterday, so I didn't watch any college football until I got back. I may have had a bottle of wine, so it was difficult to focus. And then this morning, I watched a fair bit of it. It was a wretched weekend of college football. It was not. It was very hard to glean anything from it. People were saying Michael Penix Jr. had a great game. I actually watched that on playback. I found it on YouTube. And I think this is going to sound ridiculous, but it was one of the worst sort of 400-yard, 5-touchdown games I'd ever seen. Like Michigan State was so unbelievably bad and didn't cover anybody. And he got a bit lucky with a few plays, including one I think was tipped up in the air and caught by somebody, and then they ran it in for a touchdown, and it could easily have been a pick. So I didn't think it was that impressive, actually. I think he's played a lot better than that. But overall, I did not think it was a very good weekend of college football, apart from Colorado and Colorado State. And Deion Sanders is a very interesting watch. I don't know. Did you see any of that game, Robbie? The Colorado State game?
Yeah, I watched the first half and then I couldn't get to the second half. But I watched the highlights afterwards and such. It was fun when I was watching it. I mean, Deion definitely makes it interesting, doesn't he?
He does. He's actually very similar to Pete Carroll's style. Like everything, like he was saying after the game that he punted on 4th down or something. Oh no, he kicked a field goal on 4th down when the analytics guys were telling him to go for it. And he said, I just want to take the points. He is quite old school in his approach, but also like Pete Carroll, he seems to live within chaos, and a lot of his shtick is to manage the chaos to his advantage. And I actually think he is very similar to Pete Carroll. So anyway, Seahawks win. Any final thoughts, guys, that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I'll say one thing about the Reed ski hat and sort of what I often forget. And I saw when I raised that question, what do you think we'd be talking about if we lost? And people were saying, "Oh, just enjoy the victory." And they won. Who cares? I am acutely aware of the necessity to enjoy every victory and how much it means to those guys when they do win. And actually, sometimes, if anything, I think we maybe underrate how much it means to them to win. And seeing Reed in the ski mask, you think, well, it's 1-1, like seconds, middle of September. Why are you celebrating so much? They work unbelievably hard to win, and especially games like that. And I said to some mates last week after the Rams loss, they have to now go and find a win from somewhere to make up for how bad that loss was. That wasn't just a loss that you can just say, oh, well, don't worry. That's when you have to go and make up. And like, fair play to the whole team for going the next week into probably as hard an environment as they're going to see all year in terms of the Lions' fervent fan base, desperate to win off the back of an amazing win in Kansas, ski masks galore, people going bananas about the game. Like, for the team to go in and win that game, they deserve enormous credit. And, we have a lot of like celebration police over here in the UK when soccer teams win, and people are saying, well, why are they celebrating like that? I sometimes think we underestimate how much work goes into a team winning a sports game on the professional level. And fair play to them for doing it this week, because so much was stacked against them and they stood up and were counted. So And we can be proud of the team we support this week. And that's all you really want, right? Just to be proud of the team you support going into the next week.
The Giants are 20-0 down, and there's like a minute left of the first half. They're on for another 40-0. It's on. Like, it's crazy. I think that's a good point, Adam. And do you know what the other thing I would add to what, Adam, you've said there is I really hope that we can, as within this, if you want to call it community or whatever, I hope that we on a stream or on the blog or in the comment section of the blog can raise some concerns about Pete Carroll or the likelihood of us winning a championship with Pete Carroll again, or even getting to an NFC championship game with Pete Carroll again, which is basically what we're all in it for. I hope we can raise that and not have to have every time the team wins that thrown back in your face. Like we can thrash this out at the end of the season when we know how it all ends. But I think if people want to have those opinions, I think they should be allowed to without being judged week to week. And I think if people want to go, no, I'm happy with everything and don't want to see a change, that's also fine. You know, I'm certainly not going to have a go at anybody for having a different opinion on what is most likely to get the Seahawks back to the Super Bowl. I personally do not think Pete Carroll will get this team back to a Super Bowl. But that doesn't mean that I don't think anybody should have that opinion. You are welcome to that opinion. I fear that when it gets to the end of the season, we're going to have the same bloody conversation we've been having for the last 5, 6, 7 years. That's my concern. And that the same problems keep reappearing. But if other people want to, think that he's going to get the job done, that's fine. But I think also you've just got to accept that other people are going to have a different opinion. And week to week, we don't have to reanalyze where everybody's opinions are at, whether the team has won or lost. Robbie, have you got a final thought?
Yeah, I mean, just overall, I think I kind of just what Adam said. It's all really good points. I mean, we should be, definitely happy with the team win today, and our backs were against the wall, kind of. I mean, sad to say in week 2, but we found a win somewhere that we needed to. One that I think, I most certainly went into this game thinking we were going to get our asses kicked. To be honest, after the way we played last week, I didn't expect us to put up a fight. I think our first drive of the game, coming down and putting up 7 right away, awesome, and then even to start the second half, coming out, getting the turnover and then scoring. I think all good stuff. I think it's nice to see this team, even though we see holes, is resilient. And, it should be I worry the same way, Rob, that I think at the end of the season, we're going to have the same kind of regurgitated conversations that we always have. But I'm going to enjoy this victory tonight.
I see the Rams have gone ahead against the Niners. If the Rams win this game, Sean McVay he's a heck of a coach, isn't he? You have to say.
Yeah.
Sean McVay is a heck of a coach. Anyway, that one going in towards halftime. Seahawks win. They're 1-1. A winnable game next against the Panthers. So we'll see how that happens. We're going to see Bryce Young, as long as I think they're playing tomorrow, aren't they? Is it tomorrow that they're playing Monday Night Football? There's 2 games, isn't there? So we get to see him, and then they'll be coming to Seattle on a short week. So already looking forward to that. Thank you to everybody for the super chats. It is much appreciated. Great numbers today watching live. So also really appreciate you all being with us, joining in via the live chat. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any videos in the future. SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis on the Seahawks season and all of the draft stuff, which is ongoing. We'll have lots of articles up this week as usual, plus the great stuff from Curtis as well. Join us next time. Make sure you hit the like button. That helps. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section. That always helps with the algorithm as well. Until next time, bye for now, everybody. Adam, Robbie, thank you for your company. We'll see you next time. Bye for now. Enjoy your weekend.